You are not stuck because you lack intelligence. You are stuck because your mind learned how to protect you, not how to free you. And the more intelligent you are, the better you become at building a prison you call comfort. You were taught to believe that intelligence is freedom, that if you understand enough, analyze enough, think deeply enough, you will eventually find your way out. But no one warned you that intelligence can become a hiding place. A shield, a way to stay exactly where you are while convincing yourself that you're moving forward. Highly intelligent people learn very early how to explain pain instead of feeling it. When something hurts, they don't collapse and they interpret. When something breaks inside them, they don't scream, they analyze. They turn raw emotional experience into language, logic, insight. And at first, this looks like strength. It earns praise. It earns respect. You're so mature. You're so self-aware. But slowly, almost invisibly, a dangerous trade is made. Thinking replaces living. Instead of asking, what do I feel? The intelligent mind asks, why do I feel this? Instead of asking, what do I need to change? It asks, what does this say about me? And over time, the mind becomes incredibly skilled at circling the problem, without ever stepping into the fire of transformation. You don't avoid growth because you don't understand yourself. You avoid it because you understand yourself too well, at least on the surface. This is where the trap begins. Insight feels productive. Reflection feels like progress. You sit with ideas, theories, realizations, and you tell yourself, I'm working on myself. But weeks turn into months, months turn into years, and your life doesn't change. Not because you are lazy, not because you are weak, but because your intelligence has learned how to protect you from risk. Every time action appears, intelligence intervenes. It lists consequences. It predicts outcomes. It calculates loss. What if this fails? What if I regret it? What if I become someone I don't recognize? And because these thoughts sound reasonable, you obey them. You call it caution. You call it wisdom. But underneath it is fear wearing the mask of intelligence. The most dangerous part is that you don't feel stuck in an obvious way. You feel thoughtful, reflective, complex. You feel like someone who is not ready yet, someone who is still processing, and processing becomes a lifestyle. You process relationships instead of leaving them. You process dissatisfaction instead of changing direction. You process pain instead of letting it break you open. Intelligence, when disconnected from courage, becomes a beautifully decorated cage. And the bars are invisible because they are made of words, reasons, and explanations. You don't say, I'm afraid. You say, the timing isn't right. You don't say, I don't believe in myself. You say, I need more clarity. You don't say, I'm avoiding discomfort. You say, I'm being strategic. This is why intelligent people stay stuck longer than others. Simpler minds hit a wall and push through it. They feel discomfort and move. But intelligent minds build a mental map around the wall, study it, describe it, explain it, and never climb it. The mind becomes so good at understanding the prison that it forgets the body was meant to move. And slowly a quiet sadness appears. Not dramatic, not loud, just a low, constant sense that life is happening somewhere else. You watch others act while you think. You watch time pass while you prepare. And deep down, there is a part of you that knows the truth. Nothing changes until something is risked. But risking means stepping out of explanation. It means acting before certainty arrives. It means letting the intellect follow the movement, not lead it. And this is terrifying for someone who built their identity on being smart, controlled, composed, because action exposes you. It removes the shield. It puts you in a place where outcomes are unknown and excuses no longer protect you. So the question is not whether you are intelligent enough to change. You already are. The real question is whether you are willing to let intelligence stop being your armor and become your servant. Because the moment thinking stops being a hiding place, movement begins. And that is where everything finally changes. After intelligence becomes a shield, the next layer forms quietly. Identity. You don't just think deeply. You become the thinker, the observer, the one who understands life instead of fully entering it. And without realizing it, you start protecting an image of yourself more than your future. At some point, your intelligence stopped being something you use and started being something you are. You are the smart one, the insightful one, the one who sees deeper than others. And once intelligence becomes identity, change becomes dangerous. Because change threatens the story you've been telling about who you are. To move forward would mean admitting that understanding was not enough. That awareness didn't save you. That insight didn't build the life you imagined. And that realization feels like betrayal, not of logic, but of self. So instead of moving, you defend the identity. You stay where you are because staying confirms who you think you are. This is why intelligent people often feel a strange resistance to action. Not because action is hard, but because action might expose that the thinker doesn't automatically become the doer, that the observer still has to step into uncertainty like everyone else. And that is humiliating to the ego that built itself on being ahead, so the mind delays. It refines. It waits for the perfect version of itself to appear, the version that acts confidently, cleanly, without mistakes. But that version never comes, because perfection is not a destination, it's a postponement. You tell yourself, once I'm clearer, I'll move. But clarity only comes after movement. You tell yourself, once I heal more, I'll act. But healing happens through action, and the longer you wait, the heavier the waiting becomes, until inaction feels like your natural state. What you don't realize is that intelligence has subtly trained you to value internal coherence over external change. You feel better when your thoughts make sense, even if your life doesn't. As long as you can explain your situation, justify it, and place it inside a narrative, you tolerate it. Meaning replaces movement. Understanding replaces courage. And so you become very good at surviving internally while stagnating externally. You are calm, composed, reflective, and deeply unsatisfied. You don't explode. You slowly dim. You don't collapse. You quietly resign. This is the tragedy of the intelligent mind. It can adapt to almost anything, even a life it does not want. It can normalize dissatisfaction. It can rationalize emptiness. It can convince itself that this is just a phase even when years pass unchanged. But here is the truth you avoid. Your intelligence is not holding you back. Your attachment to it is. You don't fear failure. You fear becoming someone who no longer knows who they are. Someone without a script. Someone who can't explain themselves while they're becoming. Growth demands identity death. And intelligent people resist this more than anyone. Because identity is where their value has always lived. But the moment you allow yourself to act without fully understanding who you are becoming, something shifts. The identity loosens. The mind stops leading and starts following. And for the first time, movement feels real, because the future doesn't belong to the ones who understand themselves the most. It belongs to the ones who are willing to become someone they haven't explained yet. What truly keeps intelligent people stuck is not fear of failure. Failure is familiar. It has explanations. It has theories. It can be analyzed, reframed, and turned into wisdom. No, the real fear runs much deeper than that. The real fear is losing the version of yourself you recognize. Because change doesn't just ask you to try something new. It asks you to leave someone behind. And that someone is the self you've lived with for years. The thinker, the observer, the cautious one, the one who understood instead of acted. Even if that version of you is unhappy, it is known. And the mind values what is known more than what is true. So when an opportunity appears, a moment that demands courage, risk, exposure, something inside you tightens, not because you can't do it, but because doing it would dissolve the old identity. You wouldn't just be the smart one. Thinking about life. You would become a beginner, again, vulnerable, uncertain, visible, and that feels like death to the ego. Intelligence learns early how to avoid this death. It learns to delay, to wait for certainty, to demand guarantees that life never gives. You tell yourself you're being responsible, strategic, patient, but beneath that, language is fear of stepping into a version of yourself that hasn't been rehearsed. So you keep improving internally while staying externally still. You read, you reflect, you refine your philosophy, and slowly, thinking becomes a substitute for living. This is why intelligent people often feel a strange emptiness even when they know better. Because knowing better, without becoming different, creates a split inside you. One part sees the truth, the other part refuses to move. And living in that split drains your energy more than ignorance ever could. You start to feel tired without being physically exhausted, unmotivated without being lazy, disconnected without being depressed. That is not confusion, that is internal conflict. The future self knocking and the present self refusing to answer. And here's the uncomfortable truth. The strongest resistance you feel is not against change itself. It's against the loss of psychological safety. Your current identity may limit you, but it protects you from shame, judgment, and uncertainty. It keeps you from being seen while you're still becoming. But growth doesn't happen in hiding. Every meaningful transformation requires a phase where you don't look impressive, where your intelligence is no longer your armor, where you cannot explain yourself clearly to others, or even to yourself. That phase feels chaotic, embarrassing, and deeply uncomfortable, and so the mind pulls you back. It says now is not the right time. It says you need more clarity. It says you're not ready yet. But readiness is not something you achieve. It is something you decide. The longer you delay that decision, the more the fear grows. Not because the action becomes harder, but because the identity becomes heavier. You become more invested in who you've been, and leaving that behind starts to feel impossible. This is why years pass without visible change, not because you didn't have potential, but because potential without action turns into psychological weight. A quiet regret that follows you everywhere, whispering you could have been more. And the most painful part is this: no one else sees the battle. On the outside you seem composed, thoughtful, capable. On the inside you feel like you're betraying yourself daily. But the moment you accept that becoming someone new will feel uncomfortable, even humiliating, and the paralysis breaks. Because you stop trying to protect an identity that no longer serves you. You don't need to destroy who you are. You need to outgrow them. And the future version of you, and the one you sense but haven't met and is waiting. On the other side of that discomfort, even when the desire to change becomes undeniable, something deeper still holds you in place. It isn't logic. It isn't lack of motivation. It's familiarity. The mind does not choose what is best for you. It chooses what is known. And known pain feels safer than unknown freedom. Your current struggles have a pattern. You know when they show up. You know how they feel. You know how to survive them. And survival to the unconscious feels like success. Growth, on the other hand, feels unpredictable. It carries no guarantees, and unpredictability triggers fear at a level deeper than thought. So the mind whispers a quiet lie: stay here. At least you know this pain. And you listen, not consciously but instinctively. This is why intelligent people often repeat cycles they fully understand. They know the relationship is wrong. They know the career no longer fits. They know the habits are limiting. And yet they remain. Not because they are blind, but because leaving would mean entering a space where none of their old rules apply. Freedom requires reorientation. It strips away the familiar cues your mind relies on to feel in control. And control is the drug of the intelligent mind. As long as you can predict your suffering, you feel psychologically safe. That's why the idea of change often feels heavier than the pain itself. The known struggle has an identity attached to it. You know who you are inside it, but outside it, you are undefined. And undefined feels dangerous, so you negotiate. You improve the cage instead of leaving it. You optimize coping mechanisms. You intellectualize your dissatisfaction. You tell yourself you're working on it, even when nothing externally shifts, and time passes. The unconscious doesn't care about your dreams. It cares about minimizing risk. And to the unconscious, new paths equal new threats, not because they are harmful, but because they are unfamiliar. This is why breakthroughs rarely feel inspiring at first. They feel destabilizing. They feel like stepping into fog without a map. And intelligent minds hate fog. They crave clarity before movement. But clarity comes from movement. So you stay stuck between awareness and action, knowing too much to be comfortable, acting too little to be fulfilled. But the moment you understand this and truly understand it, something changes. You stop blaming yourself. You stop calling it laziness or lack of discipline. You recognize the pattern for what it is, a survival mechanism that has overstayed its welcome. And once you see that, the familiar pain loses its authority. It no longer feels protective. It feels limiting. And the unknown, while still uncomfortable, begins to feel necessary. Because eventually, the pain of staying becomes louder than the fear of leaving. And that is when the mind no longer wins by default. One of the most misunderstood traits of intelligent people is overthinking. It is often mistaken for depth, for care, for responsibility. But beneath it, overthinking is not wisdom. It is avoidance. Thinking becomes a refuge from feeling. When you analyze instead of act, you stay protected from vulnerability. You don't have to risk disappointment. You don't have to face rejection. You don't have to confront the raw, unpredictable emotions that come with real movement. Thought creates distance, feeling demands presence. So the mind keeps you busy. It gives you endless questions, endless scenarios, endless possibilities. And as long as you are thinking, you are not exposed. You are safe inside your head. This is why overthinking feels productive even when nothing changes. It gives the illusion of progress. It makes you feel engaged, intelligent, involved. But it quietly drains your energy. Because thought without direction loops endlessly. The intelligent mind becomes addicted to this loop. It believes that if it just understands a little more, prepares a little better, resolves one more inner conflict, action will follow naturally. But action doesn't follow thought. Action follows decision, and decision requires emotional risk. This is where most people freeze. Because emotions cannot be controlled the way thoughts can. They cannot be predicted, structured, or mastered. They must be felt. And feeling exposes you to uncertainty. So instead of stepping forward, you retreat into the mind. You rehearse conversations that never happen. You imagine futures you never enter. You argue with yourself, refine your intentions, polish your self-image, all while life moves on without you. And slowly something subtle happens. You begin to feel disconnected from reality. Days blur, time accelerates. You wake up feeling like life is happening somewhere else. That numbness isn't depression. It's dissociation created by chronic avoidance of action. The tragedy is that intelligent people often know this. They can describe it perfectly. They can explain their own paralysis in elegant language. But explanation does not break the cycle. It reinforces it. Because as long as you are explaining, you are not choosing. The mind prefers endless interpretation over irreversible commitment. Because commitment closes doors, interpretation keeps everything open when nothing real. But life only moves when doors close. The moment you decide, truly decide, you feel fear immediately. That fear is not a sign you are doing something wrong. It is proof you are finally doing something real. And when you stop using thought as a shield from emotion, the energy returns. The fog lifts. Presence replaces analysis. You begin to feel alive again, not because everything is certain, but because you are finally participating. Overthinking fades when courage enters, not when answers arrive. At some point, every intelligent person reaches a quiet crossroads. Not dramatic, not announced. Just a moment where the mind realizes it has run out of explanations that still work. You've analyzed long enough. You've understood yourself deeply. You've uncovered patterns, traced wounds, named fears, and yet nothing changes. That is when a new awareness emerges, when subtle but undeniable. Understanding is no longer the problem. And that realization is unsettling. Because if knowledge isn't the missing piece, then something else is required. Something that cannot be reasoned into existence. Something that doesn't come from insight or clarity. Decision, not a decision that feels comfortable. Not one that feels logical or complete, but one that cuts through hesitation and ends the negotiation with fear. Up until now, fear has been treated like an advisor. You've listened to it, considered it, let it speak, and fear is persuasive. It sounds reasonable. It speaks in the language of caution, preparation, and responsibility. It rarely sounds irrational, but fear does not want growth. It wants control. And control keeps you small. The moment you stop negotiating with fear, it loses its authority. You don't eliminate it. You simply stop asking for its permission. You move with fear instead of waiting for it to disappear. This is where most people hesitate, because they believe confidence should come first. But confidence is a result, not a requirement. It follows action. It is built through movement, not contemplation. The future does not respond to people who wait until they feel ready. It responds to people who step forward despite uncertainty, and something powerful happens when you do that. The mind reorganizes itself around movement. Clarity sharpens, energy returns. The internal resistance weakens because the psyche finally aligns with direction. Not when you learn more, but when you act without guarantees. And once that shift happens, there is no going back to the old paralysis. Because you've proven to yourself that you are not controlled by thought alone. You are capable of choice. The intelligent mind finally stops ruling your life and starts serving it. And that is the moment you stop being stuck. Not because fear vanished, but because you stopped letting it decide.